Who regulates your dog's dinner? When the cans came back and the lot codes were traced, the next question was simple. Who's actually in charge here? On paper, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration's Center for Veterinary Medicine sits at the top. They enforce the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act for animal food, safety, adulteration, misbranding. They issue guidance, investigate complaints, test when there's a signal, and coordinate recall. But they don't pre-approve every recipe. And they don't write most of the label language you read at 6 p.m. in a pet aisle. To understand why the bag says what it says, you have to go to a different room, a hotel ballroom where the Association of American Feed Control Officials meets. AAFCO isn't a federal agency. It's a nonprofit of state and federal feed regulators that drafts model definitions and regulations. States adopt those models into law. That's how the words meat, meal, byproduct, with, flavor, complete and balanced become the rules of the shelf. FDA participates as a member and advisor, but AAFCO's definitions are the backbone of state enforcement. From a consumer's perspective, this creates a patchwork. State feed control officials inspect plants, approve labels, and spot-check stores. One state has 2 inspectors for hundreds of facilities. Another has a small lab with a waiting list for assays. They're diligent, but resources are thin. Meanwhile, multi-state brands ship the same bag everywhere, relying on the common model to pass in 50 jurisdictions that all implement it a little differently. Inside AAFCO, definitions and model regs move through committees. Industry shows up, renderers, ingredient suppliers, big pet food companies, trade groups, alongside regulators and the occasional academic. Fees help fund the organization. Expertise helps draft language. It isn't a smoky back room, but it is a room where those selling and those policing sit shoulder to shoulder. When a definition is debated, how to describe a new palatin, whether human grade requires cradle-to-bowl compliance, data arrives from the companies that make the stuff. Regulators ask hard questions. The final language often threads the needle between practical manufacturing and enforceable labeling. Then there's the phrase owners cling to, complete and balanced. That comes from AAFCO nutrient profiles and feeding protocols. A food can prove adequacy by formulation, show a lab analysis that it meets the profile, or by conducting a feeding trial under AAFCO's protocol. Either route can earn the claim. What it doesn't certify is ingredient grade. Feed grade byproducts plus a vitamin-mineral premix can hit the numbers as surely as human edible muscle and organs can. Adequacy means the minimums and maximums on paper, not the source quality in the bin. This is where feed grade versus food grade matters. Human food plants follow USDA and FDA food codes designed for products meant to be eaten by people. Pet food is regulated as animal feed. A company can choose to make a human-grade pet food, but that requires every ingredient to be human edible and every step to follow human food standards. It's voluntary. Most products are feed-grade and perfectly legal under state feed laws. Consumers often assume human-grade care by default. The law doesn't. Enforcement lives in 2 rhythms. Day-to-day, companies self-monitor, supplier approval programs, hazard analyses, environmental testing, certificates of analysis. States audit and sample. FDA inspects, responds to signals, and issues warning letters when GMPs fail or adulterants appear. When the system's aligned, problems are caught upstream. When it slips, we see it as a recall. Recalls themselves aren't proof of villainy. They're proof that something made it past the guardrails and the brand pulled the brake. Here's a small moment that shows how the gears mesh. A state inspector in a Midwestern warehouse pulls a random bag and starts a label review. Product name aligns with the 3% with rule. Check. Ingredient panel lists by descending weight. Check. Nutritional adequacy statement cites AAFCO profiles. Check. Later, a sample heads to the state lab for moisture, protein, fat, ash. It meets label guarantees. Nothing in that chain would detect a drug residue not on the test list. That's not negligence. It's the boundary of the test plan. The gap between what owners believe and what the code requires is where trust frays. Labels comply. Ads persuade. Regulators enforce the words they've written into state law. But when a not-for-human consumption stream is legally allowed, after heat treatment to feed animals, the burden shifts to verification at the chemical level, not just the microbial one. Some brands raise their own bar. Human-grade kitchens, third-party audits, expanded residue testing. Many don't, because the rules don't require it. What nobody knew when our traced bag left the plant was that compliance can coexist with disappointment. The label was legal. The nutrient profile was satisfied. The oversight structure was working as designed for feed. The family at home assumed food. Labeling games. How claims manipulate perception. Stand in the aisle and read the front of a bag out loud. With real beef, grilled, premium, natural, human grade. They sound like plain English. They're not. They're code that sits on top of those model definitions we just walked through, and the code sets tiny floors for very big words. Start with the smallest hinge. If a product says dog food with beef, the legal minimum is 3% beef in the formula, excluding water for processing. 3% satisfies the headline. Dinner in tray formula, those carry a different bar. Beef dinner needs at least 25% beef before water, not less than 10% after. And if a label says beef flavor, there's no required percentage of beef at all, just enough for a test to detect the flavor. The font rules make sure flavor isn't hidden, but the ingredient load can be traced. Now fold in species naming. Chicken meal names a species. Poultry byproduct meal doesn't tell you if it's chicken or turkey unless it's stated. Animal fat can be a blend. Chicken fat is specific. Brands that want wiggle room use the generic terms. If they want to signal quality, they'll name the species, sometimes twice, front and back. Then there's the glamour language. Premium, gourmet, holistic, none of those terms require higher ingredient quality under the rules. Natural has a definition that mostly means no chemically synthetic additives except vitamins or minerals if you say so. It doesn't mean human edible sourcing. Human grade is the outlier. You can't use it unless every ingredient is edible by people and every step follows human food handling rules. That's enforceable. Most bags avoid it for a reason. Labels also use structure to shape perception. Ingredients are listed by weight, including moisture, so fresh chicken breast can leap to first place while a dry protein meal in second actually contributes more protein. Meanwhile, companies split ingredients to push starches down the list. Instead of corn, you'll see ground corn, corn gluten meal, corn flour, each smaller by weight, so no single corn item outranks chicken. Do the same with peas. Pea flour, pea protein, pea fiber. One crop looks like 3 minor inputs. It's still one dominant carbohydrate source. Complete and balanced is the safety blanket. It comes from meeting AAFCO nutrient profiles by formulation or passing a feeding trial. Either route can be valid, both can mask fragile inputs. Many formulas depend on a vitamin-mineral premix to cover what rendered ingredients and starches don't provide. That premix does its job. It also lets a manufacturer reformulate quietly when commodities swing, swap rice for sorghum, bump pea protein, adjust fat, and keep the claim. The macro picture on paper stays tidy while the dog's bowl shifts under the hood. Here, where palatants do their quiet work. Extruded kibble loses aroma in the cook. Brands spray fats and digests after drying to make it smell like dinner. A hydrolyzed digest is an enzymatically treated slurry, think concentrated meat gravy, designed to hit a dog's nose fast. It's why a formula with modest animal content can still light up a picky eater. The dog isn't reading the panel, the dog is reading the spray. Now the trend that reset the aisle, grain-free. As corn and wheat fell out of favor, legumes and potatoes slid in. Peas, lentils, chickpeas, sometimes listed as flour, protein, fiber, took the carbohydrate role and part of the protein credit. The bags promised relief from grain sensitivities. Later, regulators investigated a potential association between certain diets heavy in pulses and cases of dilated cardiomyopathy in dogs. The science is ongoing and complex, but the marketing sprinted ahead of the research. Consumers learned the hard way that free from is not the same as safe because. Microstory, a dad buys salmon recipe grain-free after his dog's itchy spring. On the back, salmon is first, then pea protein, pea flour, pea fiber, tapioca, natural flavor, salmon oil. By dry matter, peas outnumber fish. The dog eats eagerly, palatants help. 6 months later, stools turn soft, coat goes dull. The bag didn't lie, it led. Flavor words add theater. Grilled, roasted, smoked can be descriptive of palatant profiles, not cooking methods. Farm-raised can be true for almost all poultry in commercial supply. No artificial preservatives can sit next to rosemary extract while the premix uses stabilized vitamins with carriers you won't see unless the company discloses. Private labels complicate trust. 2 bags with different branding can roll off the same co-packer line with adjacent formulas tailored to price points. One boasts ancient grains, the other protein-packed. The ingredient deck shifts just enough to defend the tagline. The plant, the equipment, sometimes the supplier lots are the same. Owners try to decode with rules of thumb. First ingredient meat, no byproducts, no corn. Those heuristics help and they miss things. A named meat meal can be a better protein source than a fresh meat headline followed by starch splits. A byproduct can include nutrient-rich organs, while a no byproduct formula leans on starch and synthetic vitamin. The trick is transparency. Named species, sensible carb load, clear fat source, lot codes, manufacturer disclosed, and if possible, digestibility data. Most labels don't offer that last one because it isn't required. The gap between front-of-bag poetry and back-panel reality is the industry's stage. The rules allow levers, brands pull them. Some do it to meet a price and still nourish. Some do it to sell a story. The dog can't arbitrate. The vet sees the outcome. And the family decides, bowl by bowl, whether the words earned their trust or borrowed it. While those words are selling the dream, the supply chain is where that dream is manufactured. The trucks, the meals, the fats, those choices decide how much the label has to work to persuade. And that chain doesn't stop at the state line. It stretches across oceans. The global supply chain. From slaughterhouse to supermarket, our bag doesn't speak one language. It speaks many: Spanish in a fish port, Mandarin in a vitamin plant, English in a Midwestern co-packer. Follow its parts. It starts with sourcing networks that look like spiderwebs on a logistics screen. Domestic slaughterhouses send offal and trim to renderers nearby. Poultry complexes ship necks and backs. Beef plants send heads and bones. On the coasts, fish processors rake up trimmings, frames, skins, viscera from salmon, menhaden, pollock. Some are cooked into fish meal on site, others head to centralized plant. Meanwhile, a quiet current moves in containers. Imported animal meals, vegetable proteins, and oils priced aggressively against domestic supplies. The point isn't origin pride, it's price, spec, and availability. Unknown to most shoppers, the most consistent line item in the formulation isn't meat, it's the premix. Essential vitamins, minerals, and amino acids are standardized powders, and the global factory for many of them sits in Asia, especially China. Taurine, B vitamins, choline, trace minerals. Pallets of drums cross the Pacific to premix blenders in the US, a typhoon, an export permit snag, or a plant outage in Hubei, and your local brand reformulates to a backup supplier or slows production. When that happens, labels don't change. Lead times do. Alongside premixes, protein markets swing. Meat and bone meal prices track slaughter volumes. Poultry meal follows broiler cycles. Fish meal rides on anchovy catches in Peru and quota decisions. When fish meal spikes, some brands lean harder on poultry meal and plant proteins. When corn is cheap, carbohydrate loads creep up. Formulators call it least cost. It isn't an insult. It's an algorithm that keeps the bag affordable, until a substitution nudges digestibility and a sensitive dog shows it first. Private labels complicate the map. A national grocer awards a contract to a co-packer that also makes a boutique heritage brand. 2 recipes, 2 price points, same extruder. Ingredients arrive to one dock, then split by formula. The boutique bag boasts small batch. The private label touts value. The difference is in spec tolerances and marketing spend. The plant's hazard plan covers both. If a contaminated lot slips through, both logos land on the same recall nota. Now remember the names that sparked a scar: melamine, aflatoxin, salmonella. In 2007, melamine-tainted wheat, gluten, and rice protein concentrate from China moved through importers into dozens of brands. It wasn't a pathogen, it was economic adulteration, nitrogen-rich powder faking protein on tests. Pets died. The ripple rewrote supplier approval playbooks. Aflatoxin, a toxin from moldy corn, has driven some of the deadliest recalls in dry food. One manufacturer saw aflatoxin levels hundreds of parts per billion, far over FDA action levels. Those outbreaks began in grain bins and supplier lots, then traveled with inadequate screening. Salmonella recalls hit raw and dry plants alike, sometimes traced to cross-contaminated environments, sometimes to ingredients. Each event exposed how a single upstream failure can travel through dozens of labels and states in days. While that was happening, ingredients like peas and lentils surged to replace grains. Containers of pea protein isolate and pea flour arrived from North America and abroad. Brands raced to meet demand for grain-free. Later, the FDA investigated a potential link between certain pulse-heavy diets and non-hereditary DCM in dogs. The agency hasn't declared a single cause. It flagged complexity and multiple factors. Still, the episode showed how fast marketing can rewire supply chains and how slow science is to catch up when every truck is already rolling. Here's a micro moment on the dock. A broker in Long Beach gets a text at 5:41 a.m. Premix ETA slid customs exam. A week delay means a plant in Kansas will run out of a micronutrient. The scheduler stares at a board of SKUs and swaps production to a recipe that uses a different premix family. No bag changes. The dog won't know. Unless a digestibility shift makes stools go sideways and the owner calls customer service. Co-packers guard their client lists, but the industry is small. A handful of conglomerates control huge slices of retail shelf space and vet clinic distribution. They own rendering assets, ingredient suppliers, and plants. Vertical integration helps with traceability and price. It also concentrates risk. When one integrated facility missteps, the recall footprint is wide. Independents buy from the same renderers and premix houses, then add narrative and niche sourcing, single origin lamb, Alaskan pollock, human-grade kitchens. Those claims cost. Some are genuine safety nets, others are loose threads. Across borders, blame is easy to export. An ingredient flagged in a U.S. recall might be traced to a Canadian broker who bought from a Peruvian mill which processed fish from a fleet that had a bad day. Everyone has paperwork. The truth lives in retained samples and the willingness to test beyond the minimum. Companies that do catch issues upstream. Those that don't find out when a state lab calls. A bag sits on a shelf under fluorescent light. It looks domestic, certain calm. Its certainty is a performance. The real story is ports and plants, commodity charts, lab assays, and a spreadsheet that changes weekly. When it works, nobody notices. When it slips, the map lights up. The vet dilemma. Advice, education, and incentives. Meanwhile, veterinarians are the translators at the counter, asked to turn labels and marketing into a plan for a living animal. Most didn't go to school to sell food. They went to treat disease. Nutrition was a handful of lectures inside a brutal curriculum of anatomy, pharmacology, and surgery. A lot of those lectures were taught with slide decks and funding from the same companies that stock clinic shelves. That's not a scandal. It's how continuing education gets paid for. But it shapes what good looks like in the exam room. Here's how that room sounds. A dog with chronic diarrhea and flaky skin. The vet checks body condition, palpates the abdomen, asks about treats and table scraps. She recommends a therapeutic formula, hydrolyzed protein, prescription only because it's tightly controlled, trialed for specific disorders, and easier to standardize than a rotation of boutique labels. The owner hears prescription and thinks drug. In reality, prescription means the company sells only through vets or with vet authorization for medical monitoring. The margin is decent. The clinic gets rebates for volume, free samples for new diagnoses, and coupons to soften the price. The vet believes it will help. Often it does. Now step into the back office where the reps visit. Distributor deals bundled diets with flea preventatives and lab supplies. End cap displays, staff training, co-branded handouts, all part of the package. A busy clinic says yes because staff time is scarce and patients need answers. Meanwhile, independent foods without vet channel distribution don't send reps. They send blog posts and influencer videos that owners bring in on phone. The vet becomes a referee between two systems, regulated claims and online anecdotes. That tension pulls at trust. Owners who have read about rendering and recalls ask why their vet carries those brands. The vet points to peer-reviewed studies, digestibility data, and outcomes in pancreatitis, kidney disease, allergies. Owners counter with stories of sleek coats on raw and fresh feeders. The truth sits between. Therapeutic diets are tools with evidence for specific conditions. They're not a referendum on every aisle bag. And many vets would love more time and neutral education to discuss home-cooked or raw safely. But malpractice risk, liability around pathogens, and the reality of clients' kitchens make those consults hard. Here's a micro story. A new graduate, first week on the job, opens a closet to find shelves of prescription diets and a spreadsheet of quarterly goals. She didn't know sales targets came with a lab machine lease. Her mentor tells her plainly, recommend what works, document why, disclose relationships. She decides to build a list, 3 therapeutic brands with data, 2 2 fresh-cooked companies that publish sourcing and digestibility, a home-cooked protocol with NRC-based calculators, and a referral to a board-certified nutritionist. It takes evenings. It earns trust. Education is the fulcrum. Board-certified veterinary nutritionists exist, too few, mostly in academia or industry. Many GPs rely on position statements from professional bodies and quick reference tools built by manufacturers. Industry-funded isn't automatically biased, but it's not the same as independent. Some schools are building stronger nutrition rotations and case-based labs. Owners rarely see that effort. They see the shelf. Incentives aren't just money. Time is the hardest currency. A 20-minute appointment has to cover history, exam, vaccines, parasite prevention, behavior, and food. A complicated diet debate can swallow the slot and leave medical work rushed. That's why handouts and default recommendations exist. They're time savers that lower risk. Choose a known formula with known digestibility. Call me if stools change. It's not lazy, it's triage. Meanwhile, online tribes grow louder. Kibble loyalists cite decades of survival and balanced nutrients. Raw feeders post before and after photos and blame ultra-processed for every itch. Home cookers swap recipes that miss calcium by a mile. Vets sit in the middle, trying to prevent scurvy in one camp and salmonella in another, while still managing diabetes and ACL tear. What nobody knew when our bag hit the clinic shelf was how many levers had already been pulled. Rebates, CE talks, liability fears, scarce specialists. Most vets mean well. They see the sickest cases and lean toward consistency and evidence they can defend. They'll back a fresh-cooked plan if it's complete and safe. They'll support a raw feeder if the household risk is low and the diet is formulated and handled well. They'll absolutely push a prescription diet when a heart, kidney, or gut needs precision. The exam room isn't a conspiracy. It's a crossroads. And outside its door, a counter-movement is gathering owners who want to see the ingredients with their own eyes and accept the work that comes with that choice. They're loud because, for some dogs, it's working. The raw and fresh food revolt. It starts small, a rash that won't clear, inconsistent stools, a dog that eats only when the bowl is drowned in broth. Then a recall hits the news. Owners don't argue definitions, they open the fridge. If they can't trust the bag, they want to see the food. That's the revolt, allergies, recalls, and a new belief that transparency has to be visible, not promised. Raw shows up like a dare, meat that looks like meat, ground bone, organs you can name without a dictionary. The case for it is blunt: less processing, better bioavailability, cleaner stools, more energy, shinier coats. Dogs eat it with focus. Owners swear the smell of dog fades from the house. The case against is just as blunt: pathogens, salmonella, listeria, campylobacter, bugs that don't care about marketing. A healthy dog might handle them, a toddler on the kitchen floor won't. Cross-contamination isn't theoretical. It's a cutting board, a sponge, a sink. Meanwhile, fresh-cooked slides in as a middle path. Human-grade kitchens, USDA-inspected meats, vegetables you recognize, recipes vetted by nutritionists, and a label that lists grams of protein, fat, and carbs per serving. Boxes arrive with dry ice. Meals are pre-portioned by calorie. The claim is traceability and control, named suppliers, batch testing, temperature logs, and a chain of custody that looks like people food. It costs more. Owners say the dog's eye's bright. Vets appreciate that pathogens are lowered by cooking, and that feeding directions are specific. Underneath both camps, there's quiet math. AAFCO profiles outline minimums and maximums. The National Research Council lays out more detailed requirements. A raw feeder needs those tables whether they know it or not. Calcium to phosphorus balance matters. So do iodine, copper, zinc, and essential fatty acids. A freezer full of chicken and beef hearts without a plan can build a deficiency the coat will reveal too late. Fresh-cooked companies publish their analyses. Good raw companies do, too, and some run third-party pathogen tests on every lot. The ones that don't rely on trust and cold steel. Here's a case snapshot. Cooper, a 5-year-old lab with yeasty ears and soft stools on 3 different kibbles, switches to a commercial raw with a complete formula: meat, bone, organ, and a vitamin-mineral blend. In 4 weeks, stools firm, ear swabs calm down, coat shines. The family is thrilled. 6 months in, they add recreational marrow bones. Cooper cracks a premolar. The vet extracts, the bill stings. The owner pulls weight-bearing bones from the plan and shifts to softer chews. The improvement holds. Another, Maya, a terrier with pancreatitis, does terribly on high-fat raw. She pivots to a fresh-cooked, low-fat, high-digestibility formula from a human-grade kitchen. calories are precise, fat is capped at a level her pancreas tolerates, and she stabilizes. The owner preps rubber mats and sanitized containers. The food goes straight from pouch to bowl. No countertop time. The dog does well because the plan fits the disease. The revolt spreads because visibility feels like safety. When the diet is ground beef, broccoli, rice, and cod liver oil measured to the milliliter, the owner feels in control. When the diet is a proprietary pellet, they don't. But control cuts both ways. Formulation errors at home can be invisible at first. Calcium too low and the body borrows it from bone. Iodine too high and the thyroid wobbles. That's why board-certified nutritionists insist on calculators, weighed recipes, and periodic blood work for therapeutic cases. The good services offer that. DIY groups share spreadsheets. Mistakes still happen. Pathogen management becomes habit. Raw households pick a sink, a knife, and a board that never touches salad greens. They thaw in the fridge, not on the counter. They wipe freezer handles. They wash dog bowls like baby bottles. Immunocompromised people and young kids push the calculus toward cooked. Shelters and therapy dog homes often ban raw entirely for public safety. It's not ideology, it's risk management. Industry notices. Legacy brands roll out air-dried, freeze-dried, and limited ingredient lines. Freeze-drying lowers water activity. Pathogens may survive, but the risk of growth drops. Some formulas include a post-process kill step. Air-drying preserves more aroma than a hot extruder. Ingredient decks tight named meats, fewer carbs, clearer fats. The price climbs. The aisle fractures into micro-segments, each promising a safer shortcut to real. Microstory, a supplier quality manager at a fresh-cooked company paces during a thunderstorm. Power blips threaten a blast, chillers hold temperature. She calls maintenance, starts a manual temp chart, and diverts any trays that flirt with the threshold to discard. It hurts. The next morning's lot passes all microbial tests. Customers never know. That's what they're paying for. What nobody foresaw was how quickly culture would change. 10 years ago, home-cooked meant boiled chicken and rice. Today, owners ask for NRC-compliant recipes, selenium sources, and EPA-DHA ratios. Vets still worry about pathogens and balance, but more are building bridges, recommending tested fresh-cooked options, warning about bones, insisting on complete raw formulas if clients won't budge, and referring complex cases to nutritionists. The revolt isn't a fad. It's a negotiation with risk, price, and values. A traced bag meets its alternative here. One path leans on black boxes and premixes, the other leans on cold chains and kitchen discipline. Either can fail, either can work. The difference is visible, and for a growing number of owners, visible is the point.